Harley Lippman is a foreign affairs analyst and Middle East expert. Welcome, Harley.
Thank you.
Welcome. Glad to have you. Okay, Israel is said to be on high alert after the death of a top Hamas leader. He was the most senior Hamas member killed since the war began 3 months ago. Is there any connection between that death and the explosion we just announced?
Well, certainly Iran will blame Israel on that, for sure. But there are many opponents to the Iranian regime in Iran. Most of the people in Iran hate the government and have committed acts of sabotage against the government. So it's unclear. But what is clear is that this senior official was killed, and it's very significant because he was the closest Hamas leader to Iran. So this really sends a signal to Iran and to Hamas that Israel is not going to tolerate the mass slaughter of its citizens, and that they will hunt these Hamas murderers anywhere and everywhere around the world as long as it takes for justice to be done. Those people will never be able to sleep in one place at night because Israel will do it until they get them all, the same way they did it during the Munich massacre. It took Israel as long as 20 years, but Israel was able to take out every one of the terrorists that murdered Israeli athletes.
I like the way the Israelis treat their enemies with determination. They get it.
Absolutely. And the clock doesn't run out. They keep it going.
Right.
But speaking of such, there's a lot of tension already. Do you think that this will actually intensify along the Lebanese border with Israel?
Oh, it's a great question. Well, here's the difference. Hamas is not a rational actor. They just want destruction and murder and war. That's what they're all about. Where Hezbollah and Iran are rational actors. And this is where Israeli deterrence will probably work. Because in 2006, when Israel and Hezbollah went to war, the head of Hezbollah in Lebanon at the end of that conflict said, wow, if I had known that Israel would do this kind of damage and really destroy Lebanon the way they did, I wouldn't have kidnapped the Israeli soldier on the border, which is what created the Hezbollah-Israeli war. So I think that deterrence will work with Hezbollah and Iran, but with Hamas, their whole ideology is about death. They think death is better than life, and that's just where their philosophy comes from. And of course, Hamas has threatened Israel that they're going to take bigger revenge. And they've said things like that in the past because Israel has assassinated many other Hamas leaders. And Israel would tend not to take it too seriously. But this time, Israel is going to be paying very close attention.
Why hasn't Israel gone after the Hamas leaders who are living in the fancy hotels in Qatar? I mean, they could go in there with assassins or with drones and assassinate some of them. Why haven't we heard about that yet?
It's a great question. Well, one, it's not so easy. Obviously, they've got ample security, and the host governments are protecting them. And the host governments, like in Qatar, are warning the Israelis, don't kill people in my country. It's a sovereign nation. Israel did that once in Jordan, and actually it was a botched attempt. And it was an embarrassment for Israel, and it didn't work out. So Israel has to plan it carefully. They're also really going out of their way to avoid killing any civilians. So it's a very complicated initiative on their part. But Israel's playing the long game, and all those people are on Israel's wanted list. And Israel's determined to get every one of them. And just stay close to your network and the news, and you'll be seeing more and more stories about this in the months to come.
My money's on Israel. They get their enemies.
As always. So do you think some of these other Arab nations will step forward to wipe out these terrorist groups like Hamas, or at least start working with the U.S. if they don't want to work directly with Israel, because I can see in the future as these groups gain more power, they may turn on their Arab neighbors, forcing them to try to join their movement and their ideology. What are your thoughts?
You asked the $1 million question because that's really the heart of it all. And so, and why do I say that? Because Israel cannot defeat radical Islam on their own. Yes, they are the strongest military and intelligence service in the world, man for man, but they don't have the weight of the United States, the European allies, and the political cover that Arab nations, as you referred to, can give them. So what has to happen is we have to wake up from the appeasement mentality that permeated Europe in the 1930s, that is still there. There has to be a coalition where Europe, Arab nations, which you're quite right, they will turn on Arab nations. They have tried to do it many times. There was uprisings in Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia. They all hate radical Islam. And MBS, the leader of Saudi Arabia, was successful in eliminating Al-Qaeda in Saudi Arabia. He had a very novel, original approach. He brought in the mothers and said, if you see your sons or daughters looking on the internet at anything radical or violent, come to us. We'll counsel him. We will not arrest him. We'll even help him find a job, even help him find a wife. They had a very original approach, and that has to come back. There has to be a coalition in the world to say that this is a battle against civilization. You know, the Jews are the canaries in the coal mine. It always starts with the Jews, but it never ends with the Jews. So it's going to come back, and Israel is only a little America in the eyes of the Arab world. It's an outpost from America, and Israel's an easy target. So they want to come after Israel first. But if you read their material, ultimately they hate the great Satan, which is what they call the United States. And sadly, I think we're going to need some horrific thing to happen, like a 9/11 or worse, to wake up everyone to finally take this course of action.
Boy, that's a very frightening statement you just made. But also we look at Europe and countries like France, they're very threatened by radical Islam, but we don't see them reacting. Tell us a little more.
Because the world like Israel, has been playing defense. And you can't win on defense. If you look back over the last few years, what would we see in Gaza? Hamas would fire a few rockets, Israel would fire more rockets back, and then that would settle it, more or less, until the next rockets that are fired. Well, you can't win on defense. You have to go on the offense.
Right.
And I think in the West, we have a little bit of arrogance. And what I mean by arrogance is that we think we know better what our enemy means than their own words. Radical Islamists want to destroy America. They make it very, very clear. And as a student of history, if we've learned anything, when bad actors and bad people say they're going to do bad things to America or to Israel, they do it. They do it. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, all these bad countries, China, Russia, they announce their Iran. They announce their intentions. It's in their newspapers. But, you know, Americans and people in the world find it too frightening to think that they have to mobilize and take serious actions. People would rather try to live their lives, make money, have cappuccino in the morning, and basically put their head in the sand. It's kind of human nature in some ways. And then it takes some horrible catastrophe to wake everybody up. I hope that doesn't happen. But if we wake up earlier, we will win. We will have to pay a price. Freedom is not free.
You know, Harley, this is one of the most interesting interviews we've done. You have just been really laid it out. Thank you. Thank you very much.
In very simple terms.
Right.
We
Well,
appreciate
thank
it.
you
We'll
for
have to
giving
have
me the
you back.
opportunity.
Thank you.
We'd love to.